Alright then, so now we've added the Google Maps script in our index page, we have access to a Google object that we can use to create a new map. Now I'm in the Gmap component right here, and this is where we want to create a map. But at what point during this component's lifecycle do we want to create it? Well, we need to wait until we have access to the DOM because we want to insert the map into the DOM. And we can't do that in the created hook because it's not mounted the DOM yet. But we can do it in the mounted hook because remember, this is when the component has mounted the DOM. So inside that mounted hook, we could instantiate a new Google map and insert it into the DOM. So let's create that mounted hook first of all. We'll say mounted, and this is a function. And inside here, this is where we want to create our new map. Now, I'm not going to render the map right here. What I'm going to do is create a function that renders the map instead. And then I'll call that function from this mounted hook. And the reason I'm doing this is because we might want to render the map at other points in the component lifecycle as well, not just when it's mounted. Okay, so we'll explore that a little bit more later on. But no, for now, what we're doing is we're going to create a method called render map that will render the map to the DOM over here. And then inside the mounted function, the lifecycle hook, we'll call that render map function, right? So let us now come down here and say methods. And in here, we'll do a method called render map, like so. And now we'll do a comma after methods. Inside the mounted lifecycle hook, we'll call render map. So this is doing the same thing as if we would place all of the Google map code inside this mounted hook, because it's just calling render map and we're placing it in here. The only difference now is that we can call this whenever we want, not just in mounted. Okay then, so how do we create this Google map? Well, first of all, we'll create a constant to store it in and we'll call that map. And we set it equal to new google.maps.map with a capital M. And then we want to place this map in a certain element on the component. Now, to do that, we'll get rid of the H2 and we'll create a div with a class of Google-map. And also we'll give this an ID equal to map. Okay, so this is where I'd like to place this Google map. So what we do is we place a reference to this element inside here as the first parameter of this map function. So we'll say documents.get element by ID, and then the ID is map, this thing right here. Okay, so now we're going to create this map and place it inside this element. Now this takes two parameters. So the next one is an object, and this will contain different options about this map. So the first option is going to be the map center. So the map center is where the map is going to be centered on the screen when we first load up this application. So we have to pass it an object which contains a latitude and a longitude. So these properties are called lat and lng for longitude. So what we'll do is we'll just make these up for now and we'll store them in our data over here. So we'll create a lat property and we'll set that equal to 53. And we'll also create an lng property for longitude and set that to -2. Totally made up. Okay, so now we'll set this latitude equal to this dot latitude to grab this thing right here, and longitude is going to be equal to this dot lng to grab this thing right here. All right then, so now we have that. The next option I'd like to place in here is a zoom option. This is the initial zoom of the map, so I'm going to place 6. That kind of zooms just over halfway. So comma, the next property will be the max zoom that a user can zoom out by, and that will be 15. And again, the min zoom is going to be around 3. Now, one more property is going to be the street view control. And this represents that little yellow man in the bottom right hand corner, which you can click or drag onto your map to view the street. Now, I don't want that to be enabled for my application. I don't want users to do that. So I use this property and set it to false to disallow it on our map. Okay, so then now what we're doing is we're creating this render map function to create this map and place it inside our template. Then in the mounted lifecycle hook over here, we're calling this render map function so that it does that. So if we save it now And then if we view this over in a browser and I refresh, then we don't get the map, but I think it's because I've said render map and it should be this dot render map, because we have to reference this component and then the function on it. So now if we save that and refresh over here, we still don't see the map. So what we need to do is go down to our style tags and we'll just style up this Google map to make sure that it does display on the page. And we'll say the width is going to be 100% and the height is going to be 100%. And then the margin is going to be 0 and auto, like so. We're going to set the background just to be FFF, and the position is going to be absolute. We're going to set the top property to 0 to have it flush to the top of the page, left to 0 as well. And we'll save that, view this in a browser, refresh, and now we see this map. Voila! But our navbar component has disappeared. We don't want that. This is going over the navbar component. So what we need to do is set the Z index to this to be -1 to go behind that navbar component. It's going above it because we set the position to absolute. We took it out of normal document flow and placed it right at the top of the page so it overlays anything already on the page. But if we set the Z index to -1, what it does is take it behind anything that's on the document already. So now we have that, we've set a specific width and height, therefore the map does now show on the page. It's centered at a specific point using that latitude and longitude, and we can zoom in and we can zoom out and we can move it across and whichever way we want. Okay, so there we go. We have the map now on this homepage, but it would be nice to start adding users to it as markers. And to do that, we'll have to tackle authentication first of all. So we'll start that by making the sign up page in the next lesson.